Hello, Social Sex students, and welcome to the specific Task 3 overview for Unit number 5. So again, I've separated out the videos so that I'm doing a step-by-step guide and then doing a content guide. Because for some of you reflected in the survey response that you get it, you get the step-by-step stuff, and so you want this to be separate so you can still get the content information. And for others, you were like, no, I still need that step-by-step. Those videos are great. So now it's just separated into 2 videos. So for Unit number 5, we are looking at and exploring the social construction of gender, race, sexuality, gender identity, as we have been all semester, doing so now through the lens of queering Islam and queer Arab people. There are several things I want you to engage in for Task 3 to read and watch and hear, but it's important to remember that particularly in the U.S., there is a really intense Islamophobia, all right, this anti-Islamic, right, we're very anti-Islamic. There's a lot of stereotypes and hatred against people who practice Islam or assume to. And so when we talk about intersectionality and when we talk about certain aspects of self that are privileged and certain aspects of self that are oppressed, right? So if we think about gender, right, being a man in society is a very privileged position, whereas being a woman, cis or trans woman or gender nonconforming, not a very privileged position in society, and we experience a lot of, sexism, we experience a lot of violence. And so when we're talking about religion, right, in the U.S., we tend to hold up Christianity as the quote-unquote correct religion. And sometimes Judeo-Christian efforts, right, are kind of melded together in that way, although there is an extreme amount of anti-Semitism as well. But for this unit, we're focusing on Islam and the ways in which Islam is assumed to be a quote-unquote backwards religion, right, which it is not, right, but these stereotypes of it being, particularly sexist or particularly egregious against LGBTQ people, instead of understanding that all religions, right, Judaism, I was raised Jewish, Christianity, right, any of them are often very sexist and are often very anti-LGBTQ, except for in particular churches or particular strains, right, so there's Reform Judaism, which is very welcoming of LGBTQ people and doesn't separate people by gender. There is the Metropolitan Community Church here in New York City that welcomes all LGBTQ individuals. It's Christian, but it's welcoming regardless of the religion that you practice. And so when we talk about Islam, there's an assumption somehow that it's worse, and it's really not, right? So it's reflecting the ways that, the U.S. as part of Western culture, Western society, as we call it, in reference to the U.S., Canada, Western Europe, right? The countries in Western Europe. This assumption that Western ways of being are somehow better than Middle East, North African ways of being. And that's simply untrue. So you can start to see how racism is built into this, right? So I'm asking you to read a couple of pretty academic pieces. The first is an actual fully academic journal article from the Journal of Lesbian Studies. You'll have to log into the John Jay Library if you're not already logged in. I'm already logged in, so it's just taking me right here. You can read the abstract, and then you can read it fully here. You can even listen to it. And you could also download it as a PDF if you like to download the PDF so you can take notes on it, using Adobe or whatever. You can see the bolded subheadings are also here on the side, so you can bounce around between them. Honestly, for academic readings, I usually suggest that you read the conclusion first because that's where academics say what we mean. I'm just saying it, just putting it out there. And then go back and read, right, the introduction, probably also the methods. With academic research articles, the bits here that are between the intro and methods is usually a literature review. Lit reviews are what academics do, and you have likely been asked to do this perhaps in some of your 300 or 400 level classes, or if you were in a 100 level research class when you came to John Jay. literature reviews are a way to say, look, I've seen what everybody else has studied, and it's really important, and here's their findings. And I'm doing this research because there's a hole in the literature, right? Something that hasn't been studied, something that hasn't been explained, and I want to help explain that through my research. So when you read this beginning part here, you're actually getting, right, that background. Then this is after, right, the methods and sampling. This is when you actually get into her actual data analysis, right? So here, right, this section, Islam and the incompatibility of religion and homosexuality. And then the next section, spirituality, forging acceptance and understanding through religious disclosure. Ooh. So take your time with this. Again, it is an academic article, so it's not, like magazine reading. It takes time. It's hard on the brain. Take notes on it. And again, for this particular unit, what we're doing is exploring the ways that Islam is characterized as an extremely homophobic religion, and the ways in which, yes, there is a lot of exclusion, right? And particularly here, they're talking about women loving women, right? So lesbian Muslims, and what it is that they experience and how they navigate both their religious identity and their sexual identity. Relatedly, then, I'm asking you to read an intro to a book, again, an academic book, called Homosexualities, Muslim Cultures, and Modernity. All I'm asking you to read is the introduction, right? So it's pulling up the whole book. You only have to read the intro. It's 8 pages. But again, this is an academic reading, so it's gonna take some brain power. Rahman is using big words and, big concepts like modernity. Because again, this assumption that somehow Islam is not as quote unquote civilized as Christianity or Judaism, which is false, right? But those stereotypes about it. And so Rahman is arguing that there's an assumption that Christianity and Judaism have evolved as, civilization has evolved, right? In this very Western, elitist way of understanding evolution of societies. And so Rahman is arguing that Islam can and should fit, right, with these ideas, but that due to our, Islamophobia and anti-Islam hate, that it's really hard, right, for that sort of visibility and inclusion. And so as a gay Muslim man, right, he's exploring this both in terms of his own experience, which you'll see an example of here at the beginning, and then his actual research. Right, so you download here to read the actual intro. Again, 8 pages, but here you have bolded subheadings, Muslim homoeroticism in historical and contemporary context. Woo! Often in these intros, you'll see that academics are talking about their other chapters, which you're not reading, but you'll get an idea of how they're building knowledge, the political possibilities, right? And here again, talking about modernity in this intersectional way. And so Rahman and the previous article and what you're getting in this particular unit is a critique of the way that Western culture privileges a sense of identity and the way that Western culture talks about being LGBTQ, right? These are very specific identities that have very specific meaning depending on space and place, and it doesn't necessarily make sense even to extend those categories or those identities to other, societies, cultures, spaces, or places, because it's not actually accurate in describing people's individual experiences. So the first 2, right, those are the heavy academic readings that I want you to engage with. Then I'm asking you to look at 2 things. One is a queer Muslim photo project. And as you scroll, you'll see the pictures. Oops. And then you'll get information about who that person is, right? So think about why this particular journalist decided to do this project. And you'll actually hear, right, from that journalist and photographer in this video, this 12-minute video highlighting, right, LGBTQ Muslims. And then I'm also asking you to read a journalistic piece called The Kingdom in the Closet, talking about how even though sodomy, which again, sodomy refers to anything that isn't penis in vagina sex, so anal sex, oral sex. So Saudi Arabia, sodomy is punishable by death, but there is gay life and living and just flourishing of LGBTQ people there, right? And so, right, there's something kind of going on, and so I want you to read about that. I don't want to give away too much. Finally, this is a podcast called The Queer Arabs, and I'm asking you to listen to this particular episode with Sham Geeth, who's an Egyptian-American queer artist. She made a t-shirt that says queer in Arabic. And so this is a longer, it's like 50 minutes. Try to listen to as much as you can. The reason why I'm asking you to also listen to this particular interview and the connections that I've made for this unit, this is some of Sham's work here, and her piece, and her art is also featured here. So Sham Geeth, this is her work here at the start of the unit, and then also embedded here, and then you'll get to hear about her and why it is that she does what she does. Again, after this, please complete your quick facts check-in, the 3 questions, and then also complete the 1-sentence summary. If you have any questions, please reach out. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I will see you online.